All right. Thank you for joining us on this rendition of the Chantay Golson Show, where we provide practical and mental, along with wellness strategy for each and every entrepreneur plus C-level and above executives. Now, my audience comprises of mostly of ages 44 to 66 plus. And so we want to always share what our experiences are, as well as help support you in recovering from burnout. This is what this channel is all about: burnout recovery, increasing your productivity, increasing your bottom line, and increasing your cash flow. I have a guest on today, Kristen Knowles, and she's here with us to help us to understand the phenomenons of this particular venture in transforming leadership. And we know that as leaders, we always have to migrate to the newness of what's going on in the world. We can't just stand still, as what worked 5 years ago may not work now, especially since we have such a great experience with a phenomenon called the pandemic. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to tell you a little bit more about Kristen, as she is the CEO of Brave Leaders Group. And this is where she uses her particular skills and specializes in helping transform leaders. Everybody, welcome Kristen Knowles to the show. Thank you, Kristen, for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Chantay. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here with you all.
Right. Well, thank you for being here once more. Tell us this. What does burnout mean to you?
Oh, so burnout to me is that place where you have lost really the vision and purpose for why you're doing what you're doing. And it's like when you're running on empty in your car and it's on fumes, and you know that you only have a little bit left before you're out of gas and you're stranded. And that to me is burnout, when we are working and doing oftentimes some of the work that we love and we started because we are passionate about this and we knew it's what we were called to, but we are running on those fumes with very little room left to be able to make it. And so we're not able to show up fully. And that to me is what burnout often feels like and what it looks like.
Right. We don't show up like we should show up, right? And so a lot of times we have to take inventory or evaluate ourselves as we are going on, because if we don't, we forget. We forget that why. We forget the reason. We forget what our gift and our talent is and how we deliver it when stress and overwhelm try to overcompensate for our vision, and therefore we become deficit. And so there's a prevalent amount of burnout inside of the corporate world. Let's kind of talk about that. What is your intake on that?
So I think especially the pandemic only made it worse. But even before the pandemic, there was this place of, if you want to grow in your career, if you want to get to that next level, well, you better be willing to hustle, to put in 50, 60-hour work weeks, sacrifice your family or your community or even your health oftentimes. And it's never explicitly said, right? We never say to people, sacrifice your health in order to get ahead in your career. But it's manifested by how the people in leadership are behaving and what they're asking of their people to do. And so when the pandemic hit, now all of a sudden we're all at home and there's this fear in the job market of, well, people are being laid off. I have to work really hard to prove that I should still keep my job and make sure I'm valuable and make it seem like I don't have children who are also stuck at home with me, right? And that I'm trying to share a tiny space with the rest of my family and doing my best in this. And the pandemic kind of put this extra pressure onto people to, well, this is what we have to do if we want to keep our jobs and if we want to survive and help the company survive throughout this year. And then it basically pushed all of the stress and all that burnout into our lives, where we sleep, where we eat, where we are with our family, and having to act like it's not there, which really was, at the end of the day, just unrealistic. But we saw it really prevalent throughout all industries, I would speak with clients and with people, and they would say, I'm working, it feels like all hours of the day because I have to step away to help my kids with their virtual school. And to make up for that time, I'm working till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm just trying to figure out how to make it through.
Mhm.
But I believe, again, that it started even before the pandemic. And then all of a sudden it just shifted and it looks different now.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, one of the key things that you stated that resonated with me was leadership behaviors. And I want to kind of dive into that a little bit more. So when it comes to the consensus of your clientele, talking about their leadership, talking about the culture of the company. Let's dive into what they are saying about the leadership behaviors because we have leaders listening. They've been in their leadership department, in their executive role for quite some time. And as I may mention, we can become complacent. We can just continue to do the same thing over and over again, despite the generation that's coming in that's different from what we recognize, especially they have so many different ways that I can imagine the old school leader is having a very difficult time. So let's kind of dive in a bit in reference to the behaviors that you are hearing that are of leaders, and then we can kind of talk more about that.
Sure. So I work a lot of times with high-level executives in the C-suite. Uh, and I can tell you specifically conversations I've had with CEOs. One of them was, I don't expect my people to work on the weekends or late at night, but that's just what I do. Or another CEO I was working with, and he was like, my family, we have a vacation home. He's like, I maybe go at best once a year or a couple weekends, but I don't take vacations. Anyway, through these conversations, oftentimes what I have to help leaders understand is you may be saying one thing, your actions are saying another. And so, what that actually tells the rest of the people who work for you is, well, if you want to be successful and get ahead, I need to see that you also are going to jump on late at night and respond to messages and emails. Or I need to know I can get a hold of you on the weekends and that you're willing to do that. Or, well, we just don't take a lot of vacations here, right? That's what you're saying if you want to be successful, if you want to show your value and your worth in the company. And oftentimes they'll say, well, that's not what I'm trying to do at all. But I'm like, well, our actions speak louder than our words. And we
Mm-hmm.
have to understand, what is that culture that we're doing? What are the people underneath you doing? And oftentimes that's what I'll say is, what's that next level down? And if they say, well, they're also doing those same behaviors, but we tell people that's not what's expected. What it is what's expected. If all of your senior leadership and your executive team are all working 70, 80 hours a week, barely seeing their families, or if it is when someone says jump, they say how high, right? That's the culture that you're creating within your company. And so we have to be really careful of, we cannot say one thing, but then behave a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just call it what it is. It's hypocritical. And often that's not the intent.
Mm-hmm.
I understand, I'm as a CEO and working with a team that I have, it's hard sometimes when you feel like, well, it's the only time when I'm not in meetings all day is to respond to emails late at night. What am I going to do? And I often will tell them, maybe schedule them so they don't go out until the next morning, right? Or maybe make sure that you are unplugging and showing that it's okay to take a rest. In our culture, we understand that really well rested people who have healthy balance in their life and know how to say no, that's rewarded in this company. And so I think it's important to understand, what are the behaviors we are rewarding to the people who report into us, and what are the behaviors we're modeling.
Mm-hmm. You know, a couple of more things came to me as you were speaking. Number one, automation. Number two, leading from fear. So, you know, we all have this mindset that I must complete every single thing on my plate in order to be successful. And the more that I do that every single day, the more close I can get to being overwhelmed and burnout. Now, burnout has variables to it. And as a burnout recovery specialist myself, working with small business owners as well as C-level and above executives, I too understand their mindset. Now, with that being stated, the fear of not looking as if I'm a great leader. And therefore, what behaviors does that make me have? Now, I tell a lot of people that your behaviors, your verbals and your nonverbals are always contingent based on what's going on in the inside. You cannot hide it no matter how much you try. And if you do get by with hiding it, it's just going to be for a little short while. Because in the process of burnout, you'll find yourself getting snappy, getting moody, getting testy, and getting frustrated. And somebody is going to get that volcano. Now, while we have displacement, meaning whoever is upsetting me, I'm not going to give them my upsetness. I'm just going to take it home, or I'm going to take it to the dog, or I'm going to take it to the hot dog stand lady on the outside of the office, because I can't dare give it to who deserves it. And that's why I talk to my audience about effective communication styles, and the list goes on and on. But one of my biggest points here is that if we can understand what our fears, our insecurities are, and our et cetera in leadership, we certainly can become better at our leadership once we fix those things. We cannot fix our business, we cannot fix our leadership in our department until we fix ourselves, and that is from within. Now, let's talk about this, Kristen, because a lot of leaders and small business owners, we can't exclude them, has a lot of pride. And I'll go back to my original point. Nobody can see that I'm struggling. Nobody can know, oh, no, no, no. How does your transformation company, or the process of transformation within your company per your clients, how do you address this pride thing, this not willing to be vulnerable? How do you address that? And how do you think that really affects burnout, or what linkage does it have to burnout?
I could not have done any of that better. That is exactly the type of work that we do, especially at the corporate level, because I think it's so important to work at that one-on-one level. But then often what we have is maybe a couple of people who are doing that inner work and dealing with that, but then across the company, nobody else is. And so when we come in and work with companies and create their leadership programs, our foundation is always that we create the first thing that we address in leadership programs and in culture transformation is self-leadership. And it's a lot of that self-inner work and helping leaders to understand exactly what you said. What's going on in your internal world is going to dictate your external world, and how you show up to your team, how you react to things, how you respond to failure, how you respond to all of the missed deadlines and frustration within the team, because it's going to happen. But if we are not managing our internal world, and if we don't have a process to do that, then, like you said, it's going to come out one way or the other. And so we start with a foundation of self-leadership, where we create within the company culture of, you need to recognize as a leader, it's your job to know what's going on inside you, how to manage what's going on inside you, how to own it, how to understand that it actually is what makes you human and makes you a better leader. And then how do you process those fears and process those emotions in a healthy way, and then be able to actually lead that to your team that is underneath you, and create a culture where they can speak up and say, hey, actually I'm struggling over here, I need some help. Or, one of the things I love is I work with companies, and I can always tell a healthy culture in a team when the leader comes and says, hey, we have this whole new initiative, we've got to pause everything we're doing, and this is the new thing. And the team responds back and says, okay, then what on our plates can actually be put aside? Because it's not realistic to do all of that right now, right? Not everything can be important. So let's make sure our priorities are right. And they say that to their leader, and then they work back to make sure that they are focused on the right thing, that they're creating healthy balance and boundaries in the team, and able to speak up when they say, that's not a realistic milestone, right? Or
Right.
that's not a realistic expectation. So we work a lot at that foundational self-leadership. And then the next level up is creating that throughout the culture to where that's the theme. And that's how we see that shift and transformation really happen.
What rebuttals do you get from leaders by whom you discuss the need to work internally? I know that they they say all sorts of things because of their pride. What kickback do you get?
It's funny because a lot of times I'll first hear, yeah, I know it's important. And it's almost like if they just acknowledge that they know it's important, and that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
So it's first being like, oh, okay, so it's important. What is the work you do then on that? How do you work on that inner place right now in your day to day? And they'll say, well, yeah, I know it's important, just don't have the time right now. That's the biggest one. Don't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, they're counting on me. And so if I show any weakness or any vulnerability, they're going to be scared for their job, or they're going to be scared we're not going to make it. I was speaking with a CEO recently, and he said, I overshared to some of our leadership team when we were struggling to make ends meet one month in the midst of the pandemic. And it actually caused a lot of them to go into extreme fear. And so it was actually even working with him to help him to understand who are those close people that you can share, because you don't need to just tell the whole company, guys, if we don't make this number this month, we're going to go under. Well, that's not being vulnerable. That's actually a response from fear. But who are those couple of people who are really close? They can handle it, and you can be vulnerable and say, this is realistically where we are, and we need to actually help rally our team to know that we've got to make these numbers. We can instill fear, but honestly, this is where I'm struggling. Do you all have any ideas, or what are your thoughts on how we approach this, right? So it's helping them to know what's the appropriate level of vulnerability, and knowing that if you don't have at least two people around you that you can be vulnerable and let in and speak to you, then that burnout is going to happen and you're going to collapse. And so working with them oftentimes is you either have, well, we know it's important, just don't have time, or if I do it, it's going to actually scare the whole company, and I can't cause that type of chaos. So it's helping them to understand what it really means and how to do it in a healthy way.
Yeah, I think taking the time, I think the power of realizing that you as a leader, you as a business owner is more important than anything else would really remedy the concept of getting towards burnout. Because if you feel that you need something, you will go get it. It's just like an office equipment. If your printer goes down, your copier goes down, how long will it stay down? Think about that, especially in a large corporation. The secretary is going to be on it. Somebody's going to be on it immediately. So why can we not look at it the same way? The machinery, the equipment, my brain, my body, that's the force that I'm using for creating my business or creating my cash flow or my outcomes or et cetera. So to your point, it's very necessary to realize that our mental health and our wellness is more important than anything else. When we have those things in mind, oh, wow, amazingly, things start showing up in our business that we've been wanting to show up. Opportunities, vendors, speaking engagements, new manufacturers, the list goes on and on. Now, I was at a engagement, and one of the millionaires stated this, which was phenomenal for me. So not only am I a burnout recovery consultant, I'm also a medical provider, a psych medical provider. And so with that being stated, he stated, I'm going to just paraphrase it. He stated, it was not until I forgave my father from childhood troubles. It wasn't until, right? So he was doing well, acclimates, et cetera, because he was on the stage, money beyond measure. But it wasn't until he forgave his father that he seen another dynamic in his life. His business went further than he ever had imagined. So there's something to saying decluttering our mind, our body, our spirit, our souls, our habits have everything to do with the energy that our executive brain needs to be able to do everything that we need it to do. Now, why do I make mention of the executive brain? Your executive brain actually is the part of the brain that holds all of the trauma, that holds all of the anxiety, the madness, the frustration. And so it only has a certain capacity. So if you are living your life with clutter of not forgiving your father, being upset with your daughter, the list goes on and on. The executive brain is trying, it's just trying. And so the amount, if it's holding 70% of your problems, now hear me good. If it's holding 70% of your problems, its only job is to focus on not letting these things tear you down today. That's what its job is. So you only have 30% to work on to possibly call yourself thriving. And that's why a person always just gets to almost.
That's good.
Almost. I almost got the contract. I almost got the vending. I almost finished my paperwork. I almost followed up. So understanding that your mental health and your wellness is beyond any other thing, because if you are not healthy, nothing else will be healthy.
Mm-hmm. It's so true.
Yeah.
And we see that at the team level too, like you were just saying, where, you know, you aren't able to get to that next level until he forgave his father. I see that across teams. It's like they don't realize by ignoring all of that internal stuff that's going on. That's why your team is, why does it feel like we're always struggling to communicate better? Why does it feel like we're always just clunky in our processes and we're slowed down and it just feels like these things aren't working? Like, well, because we have all that stuff, like you said, bottled up inside that executive brain, and our team is trying to function in this way. And until we actually create a place within that whole culture or within that team where they're able to, hey, deal with their stuff and get that out of the way, things start moving so much easier and, you know, and synchronized, and being able to remove barriers and function and collaborate better. We see it all the time. And it's one of those, like you said, when we remove those, you know, barriers and we start working on that mental health and we start making that a priority, that things just shift. It happens every time. You're completely right.
Right. And so remember that clarity comes from not only confidence, but it comes from removing all the things that are weighing you down. So if someone is a visionary in the company and someone is an executor in the company and somebody is an idealist in the company, a creator in the company, in particularly, you need your brain to be clear. You need your brain to be free, because this is where you find yourself sitting in the corner office, looking down on the floor or looking out the window, feeling lost because your mind is cluttered and you can't understand why you can't be creative. These are some reasons why. So we want you to have an in-depth look within yourself, be real. I'm not so sure, I am sure, but to be politically correct, I'm not so sure why people choose not to address their mental health. I don't know why it's so taboo. But if you would go to the doctor if your heart was beating irregularly, and you would take that medication. You would go if you stump your toe. Just because you can't see these issues with your eyes doesn't mean they do not exist. And so, Kristen, let's kind of talk about this in our time that we're winding down. You say that there are signs of burnout, and you also say that leaders can do some things to prevent burnout. Let's kind of talk about those two variables.
Yeah. So I'm sure you have know a lot of this as well, being like a burnout specialist, recovery specialist, but they have actually shown there's like 4 stages to burnout, right? And what I found is that if you ignore stages 1 and 2, which is often what's ignored, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, that is how we end up in that extreme burnout. And so being able to be conscious of those key signs that are showing up in those first couple of stages, we're able to mitigate that and actually, again, ask for help, do something about it. But that first stage is honestly, it's like an adrenaline rush. Oftentimes we'll see it in people starting new projects or maybe get a new job or a new boss, whatever that looks like. But we'll get this like adrenaline rush and we start working those long hours. We become consumed in what this is. And we think that we are just really happy and on this high, but it's actually an anxiety driven, fueled way of working. Again, it's kind of fear driven. We feel the need to prove ourselves and feel the need to do whatever it takes rather than having a really healthy, balanced approach and knowing our worth and being able to show up with our full selves and with our worth without having to feel the need to get external validation. So that's the first stage. And I tell people, I'm like, if you can notice when you're in that place and you are in that strive, adrenaline push, proving, trying to prove yourself, if you can notice that and start taking inventory of what need am I trying to get met here? Why do I feel the need to prove myself? Well, what is my worth? What do I know that I bring to the table? What can I own? If we can just do that, man, you're going to be set. But oftentimes we don't. And then we end up in stage 2. And that's what you were talking about earlier, where we're just frustrated, right? It's just these micro frustrations that seem to fill our day, where we get home and we go to look at the trash and it's overflowing and we're like, can nobody else take the trash out around here? Can no one else do anything? Or why is the sink filled with dishes? Because we've been pent up with that burnout all day long. And so we're snapping and we're irritable and we're frustrated, taking it out on the hot dog vendor, like you mentioned. All of those are that sign. And again, we write that off because we think, I just had a bad day. I'm just tired. Well, my kids don't help out around the house. Like and it's always a reason rather than looking at, actually, I think this has more to do than just what's going on with the trash or the dishes in the house. It's once we get past that is where we actually start using the language around burnout. We'll hear people say, I'm just struggling. I feel like I'm on the verge of burnout, because that's where we end up in that high stress, feel like we just don't have anything left to give. We're exhausted, we're fatigued. That's when we're in that stage 3. And we'll use terms like burnout then, but we didn't realize that we had signs along the way. We just didn't do anything about it. So knowing how to recognize ooh, why am I this upset about a sink full of dishes? Is this about dishes? What's going on? Why am I feeling that way?
You're talking about the level of responses.
Yes. So being able to catch ourselves, I think, is a huge place within that. And then, when you're thinking of how we can also prevent it, not just asking ourselves those questions, but really staying connected to our why and to our purpose. I found that purpose is a wonderful thing of helping to prevent burnout, because there are seasons, and we've all had those times where there are seasons where we are having to work long hours. We are having to push a project, and it's what it is, right? But when we're fueled by our purpose, it's connected to something deeper within who we are, not just this work and not having to prove ourselves, but it's really that, man, I'm doing this to serve my purpose and to serve these people or to serve this community. And there's a why behind it. It totally shifts. And it does allow people to work in this and sometimes harder situations for a short amount of time, but being able to still have balance in the midst of it. And so a lot of the work we do is actually helping companies become really purpose driven and to lead their teams through a process that helps them to connect to that purpose, know why they're doing it, create healthy boundaries and a culture of that within their team.
Okay, and that's what creates Brave Culture, your company. Kristen, I thank you for being here with us. Is there anything you would like to leave with the audience in terms of helping them to recover and or overcome?
Yeah. So you're welcome to find me on any social media platform. And I love to share content on this on LinkedIn. It's Kristen Pinkston Knowles, Instagram, Kristen Pinkston Knowles. I would love to leave a free guide that we often use with our clients. This is actually what we go in and use with the C-suite and with corporate teams. And it's our Start from Purpose guide. And it will actually help facilitate you into how do you rediscover and reconnect to your purpose in every area of your life, and then how that shows up in your leadership. So I'd love to be able to gift that to you all. go and download the guide, use it with yourself, use it amongst your teams. And we found that that's just a great place to really start that work.
Okay, well, everybody, thank Kristen Knowles for being here. You can pick up this episode either on any of the podcast distributions or our YouTube channel, Chantay Golson International Consulting Firm. And you'll find a plethora of resources on the subject of burnout as we specialize in the niche of burnout recovery for small business owners as well as executives, C-level executives and above. So we are wishing you well. Be productive on today. Think about some of the things regarding your internal self and your internal clutter and identify what you need to get rid of. There are people out here that can really help you. You have Kristen Knowles, you have Chantay Golson, and we are here to serve you to the best of our ability. I have experienced burnout at the severe level, not just the basic, the severe, and it took me 4 years to recover. So I know what you are experiencing. I know what the possibilities of what you can lose, because that was actually a part of my particular journey. So make it a great day. We'll be back on next Thursday. I hope that you have a good day. Take care for now.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.